What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. It's Saturday, so time for my favorite video of the week, where we go over what I think the best and worst plays are this week. As with every Saturday video through the Super Bowl, this video will be sponsored by our friends over at Underdog. They actually opened up a way too early best ball contest for the playoffs, like the actual NFL playoffs, which I think is always a super interesting contest to enter. The playoffs, especially right now, are certainly not locked in. So if you have a take on who you think's making the playoffs, you think you can get like a unique stack right now, then that's a really fun contest to enter. I got 11th place in their big playoff contest last season because I was able to get a Rams versus Bengals stack when, not that many people were stacking those two teams for the contest. So again, if you have a take on who you think is going to the Super Bowl, and if it's unique, if it's not just like the Eagles versus the Bills or something like that, then head on over there, enter the contest, see if you can get together a unique build. And as always, if you sign up for your first account today, use promo code FA, they'll match your first deposit up to $100. That's a free $100. But today isn't about best ball. We're going to try and keep the streak going, hit on some props this week. My top 8 props are 55% on the season, top 6 all above 65%. So we've been doing really good. We just missed out on the 20-1 last week. You can blame the Commanders for that one on a meaningless penalty to basically end the game. We could have hit if they weren't idiots, but then, they caused the penalty, end the game. That was dumb. This week, I figure we go back to what has worked in the past. We hit on Miami the last time that we included them in the stack. Over the last 2 weeks before this, the model was in love with Derrick Henry versus the Texans, then Justin Jefferson against the Commanders last week. Both did really well, so we'll try and make it 3 in a row. The one it likes more is obviously Tyreek Hill, but he is just in a beautiful spot, and just taking the spot even out of it. Like, he's on pace for one of the best seasons of all time, over 2,000 receiving yards. So just saying he's playing, his props 90.5, like knowing nothing else, you're probably just taking the over at that. But in terms of just pure matchup, Jalen Waddle has the number 2 cornerback matchup of the week. Tyreek Hill, number 6. Like, they have a really, really good matchup. Then when you factor in the strength of the wide receiver, we have Hill and Waddle ranking first and second in matchup advantage according to Scott Barrett. So really good spot for both these guys. The Browns just aren't really capable of stopping these two. And even if they don't go nuclear, which I think Tyreek Hill's probably dropping a nuke this week, but even if he doesn't, they can hit their over. They're going to hit this over more than 50% of the time. And then obviously, if you like Tyreek Hill, you like Jalen Waddle, well, you're going to like Tua as well. That's basically a free square if you're going to take the other two. So what we're taking the over on right now is Tyreek Hill, 90.5 yards, Jalen Waddle, 69.5 yards, Tua, 268.5 passing yards. The question becomes, okay, you're stacking that side. You obviously need to attack the other side. The odds that no one on the Browns does well, and yet Miami is pushed enough to continue throwing the ball, to continue being aggressive and not just run the clock out, is low. Like, I guess each of them could hit for like a 60, 70-yard touchdown, hit their overs, and then they just run it after that. But like, you want this to be a close game. Honestly, you want the Browns to jump out to a lead and for Miami to come back, kind of like we saw in the Detroit game. What was it, like 2 to 3 weeks ago when we were kind of on that one? Well, the Miami pieces all hit because Detroit got up and Miami's like, all right, well, we're still going to win this game, but we're going to throw it a little bit more now, and they all went off. So who do I like on the other side? Donovan Peoples-Jones has yardage totals of 71, 50, 74, 71, and 81 over the past 5 weeks. I feel like maybe he's just like an overlooked player because obviously Amari Cooper is still better, but he's been playing really well. His over-under this week is 44.5. So he's hit that in 5 straight weeks. Plus, if we look historically, and especially this season, Amari Cooper, we just know he's the type of player that plays better at home. Like, that's just been a thing throughout his entire career. When Amari Cooper is at home, he plays better. This season, they've got 5 home games. He's averaged 6.4 receptions, 91 yards, 5 total touchdowns in these 5 games. I believe it's 1 per game. Obviously, it's one per game. It's one in every game. And then in the 3 road games, he averages 2.3 receptions for 33 yards and 0 touchdowns. So obviously, it's not just like, oh, he's on the road, he's not going to do anything, right? These are just like sort of trends that we see, but it's something we have seen throughout his career, is that he does play better at home and worse on the road. And so we look at Donovan Peoples-Jones. Well, what's he done on the road? 11 targets, 9 targets, 6 targets. He's got 60, 71 yards, all 3 hitting the over. So I just think like he's the second most used player. They're going to be pushed. Like the odds that the Browns can get up, but the odds that they stay up for the whole game is pretty low. And he's a big play threat. And like the guy we're going to talk about in a second, that correlates so beautifully with Miami. If Donovan Peoples-Jones hits, not even for a touchdown, just hits for like a 40-yard play at any point, well, then he's definitely hitting the over because he needs like 5 extra yards after that. But that also gets them down the field quickly, elevates their chance of scoring on that drive, and makes the drive quicker. We don't want, 8-minute drives because that just kills the clock. It keeps the opposing team on the sideline. We have 3 players in the opposing team we need to hit, and they're overs. And so we want Peoples-Jones to hit deep downfield because that's going to make Miami more aggressive, get them back on the field. And it's the exact same thing with Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb does not have a good matchup this week. This is a bad spot for Nick Chubb, but he's a fantastic player. Spot matters a lot less when you've got super elite talents. He's one of the 3 best pure runners in the NFL. You could definitely argue he's number 1. Like, he's just incredible. And he hits some big plays. So even if they kind of bottle him up most of the time, it really just takes one play for Nick Chubb to break out, have a 60-yard run, and then he's definitely hitting the over for the whole game. And that big play gets Miami back on the field, just like we talked about a second ago. So for those of you listening on Spotify, you can't see on the screen, I've probably listed at this point what the overs are. It is again, Tyreek Hill, 90.5 receiving yards, Waddle, 69.5 receiving yards, Tua, 268.5 passing yards, Donovan Peoples-Jones, 44.5 receiving yards, and then Nick Chubb, 84.5 rushing yards. So that is the 20-1. But what else do we like this week? Through 9 weeks, my number 1 prop has gone 8-1 this week. The honor goes to Christian McCaffrey, over 212 rushing plus receiving yards. 49ers coming off bye. They're getting more healthy. They're going to be incredible this week. I also tweeted out we should probably just be taking the over on their 26.5, just like total points. You can't do that in Underdog. It's an Underdog video, so we won't do that one. But 26.5, you can find that somewhere else. I would take the over on that. But we look at McCaffrey. He's now fully integrated into the offense. He had 1 billion touches last week. Like, he was fully integrated, or last week, 2 weeks ago, because they were on bye last week. But in their last game, he was already fully integrated. Now you give him a bye. Like, he's good to go. He's going to be used a ton. They face a Chargers defense that ranks 29th in rush defense DVOA, 32nd in yards per carry allowed. I mean, they are allowing 6 yards per carry, over 6 yards per carry to opposing running backs, thanks to ranking bottom 7 in both yards per carry after contact and explosive play rate. They can't tackle. They're letting up big plays. They're letting up, yards per carry just on average, but like obviously the average is going to be elevated by these big plays. We know the 49ers are very capable of having big plays. Like, this defense can't stop running backs. They're basically the worst, along with the Texans, at stopping opposing running backs. That is terrible news when you're going up against Christian McCaffrey and the 49ers offense. Now, I'm hoping in my 16-team league, I need Elijah Mitchell to play and get me like 4. Like, I need some sort of production there. It's him or Isaiah Spiller. I'm running back 2 spot because I don't have, I think it's Stevenson in that spot. So I need him back. And I think he can return this week. And I think that might push people off of McCaffrey. They'll see that and be like, oh no, they really like Mitchell. They certainly do. They love Mitchell. Mitchell is not going to be used in the passing game. And in his first week back from the injury, like, he's a player that they don't trust to stay fully healthy over the whole season. And so they're not going to overload him. And they have Christian McCaffrey. Like, as much as they like Mitchell, McCaffrey's obviously better. And so I don't care. Like, basically, they're probably, like, I think I have it projected right now for like 6 carries, in that like 6 to 7 carry range. And this is assuming he even plays. He's practicing. I think he's going to play. I hope he plays. I don't know that he's going to. So if Mitchell returns, he's probably only getting like 6-7 touches. And in a spot like this, that is totally fine to remove that from McCaffrey, because like that's just really coming from the other running backs in this backfield. McCaffrey's still going to get all those receptions. He's still going to get plenty of carries. He can still easily hit this over. So I don't want people to panic if they see Mitchell is back. I really don't think it's a negative. I'm projecting that to happen, and he still projects way over this. After McCaffrey, I like both George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth this week. Pickens has over-under at 43.5, Pat 44.5. I wouldn't say this is like an amazing spot against the Saints. In fact, it's like probably the worst spot for Pat. Like, it is a terrible spot for tight ends going up against the New Orleans Saints. But this is where their line should be if Claypool was still on the roster. I mean, Pat has averaged 52 receiving yards per game this season, and now he's going to see increased total opportunities. So dropping his line by 8 yards on average when he's going to have more opportunity. Like, I know the matchup is difficult, but that's being a little bit aggressive. And then if we look at fantasy points, wide receiver quarterback matchups, Pickens has the third best matchup of the week. And so he is a rookie wide receiver coming off of bye, spot that I've talked about a million times. This is when they start to break out. A great talent, has averaged this line already in a good wide receiver quarterback matchup when you've got, the third wide receiver leaving the team and they don't really have that much talent behind him. Like, again, I don't think either of these two are going to absolutely smash, but at 43.5 and 44.5, they hit that over probably 60 to 65% of the time. And so it's very smart to take the over, and it doesn't take that many plays. Like, even if this is a slower paced game, maybe a gross game overall, how many catches is it really going to take Pickens to get to 44 yards? Like 3? And if he's not getting to 3 receptions, then does Deontay have 20? Like, how are they moving the ball? Like, it's not going to be on the ground with the running backs, and they're still going to throw it. So, unless Pat goes off, and again, I don't think Pat's going off. I think he's going to be around 60 yards. So line too low. I don't think they go off, but I would still take the over. After these two, I would say Mahomes over 301.5 total yards. He's hit this over in 4 consecutive games, and I do think that the Jaguars are going to lose, but make the game competitive. So I don't think they're going to get steamrolled, put up like 10 points, and lose 30-10. I think they can at least make it somewhat competitive. Maybe by the end it's a blowout, but I think they keep it within 10 points for most of the game, or at least within striking distance for most of the game. The 68 pass attempts from last week by Mahomes is not going to happen again. Like I said earlier this week, that was like 14 more pass attempts than he'd ever had in a game in his career, at least regular season. I didn't even look at playoffs, but let's be honest, 68 is not going to happen again. I don't care if he did it sometime in the playoffs. And so kind of throw that out. But now on the season, every single game he's thrown the ball at least 34 times. So we can kind of consider that his floor. Mahomes has played in 51 career games with at least 34 pass attempts. He's hit this over in 63% of those games. And if you want to take it a step further and say, well, Casey's probably going to win, how does he perform with 34 or more pass attempts in wins? He's hit the over in 70% of those games. So it's not a lock. Nothing is ever a lock, but I don't think there's anything to fear with the Jaguars defense to where we're saying something that's happened around 63 to 70% of the time that we think has at least a 60% chance of happening on average. I don't think we all of a sudden say, oh no, but it's the Jaguars defense, pull that way down. I think it's still a good bet to happen around 60% of the time. The final prop today is actually 2 props, but it's both unders. We are 4-0 this season on passing yardage unders. We have not missed yet. We've taken all of them in the last few weeks. I've got 2 more for you this week that are just egregious. Remember the Kenny Pickett line where he was at like 255? It was absolutely absurd. I think it ended around like 215 or something as he was playing the Eagles. I think Underdog gets aggressive. They see some of these passers and they're like, ooh, this could be a good game, and they kind of jack them up. But Jared Goff at 250.5 is far too high. And Dak Prescott at 266.5, also far too high. Goff faces the Bears defense that has been significantly worse as of late. Maybe that's what they're thinking, but they're most easily attacked on the ground. And that's for both these teams. Like, the Bears and the Packers are 2 of like the premier run funnels in the NFL. You don't really throw on them. Like, you at this point can do anything against the Bears. But ideally, you're running the ball because it's so easy to run on them. And they're still competent in like the pass defense, especially for the Packers. And so both these teams, the Lions and the Cowboys, are probably going to lean more run heavy. And we already know on average, Detroit wants to run the ball. Detroit is missing TJ Hawkinson now. They still don't have Jameson Williams, St. Brown not 100%, Swift not 100%. And so it's like, you look at that and you're like, Goff has hit this under in 3 of his last 4. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense that it's that high. So definitely under there. And then Dak, like he's a scary player to take the under on, and maybe that's why they have it so high, because no one takes the under. But he's hit this under in all 3 games that he's played this season. He now plays at Lambeau Field against a Packers defense that, like I said, is not only a run funnel, but they've allowed the second fewest total passing yards per game, which their average, I think off the top of my head, it's like 170, 175, not the 266 and a half that he's at. So my projections have it at Goff 230. I think Dak was at 233. That's probably where the Lions should be on average, not 250 and 266 and a half. And for those of you who are definitely going to complain in the comments section below that Underdog has been moving these lines after these videos, I mean, I posted both of these projections on Tuesday. Every single Tuesday, like afternoon tonight, these projections go up. You've had plenty of time to take it before Underdog sees the video, takes the lines down, or drops them. So sign up for Underdog account today. Take advantage of these props. And when you do, use promo code FFA. They'll match your first deposit up to $100. And then, take a shot at the playoff contest. Like, obviously, you guys are playing fantasy right now for season long, but that's going to end, in week 17. It's really fun trying to put together these different builds, stack up different teams, think about who you think's playing in the Super Bowl, and try and get different matchups. And if you happen to get lucky, like I got super lucky last year picking the Rams and the Bengals. I didn't actually think that was going to be the Super Bowl end, but I was like, hey, the build is kind of taking me towards this. And if it happens, how many teams are going to stack that up? So good luck this weekend. That, my friends, is the end of this one. Hope you all enjoy. If you did, how about hitting the like button? How about subscribing to the channel if you're new here? Thanks for watching.